Hello and welcome to Politically Incorrect Knitters, your knitting news source. I'm Ann Pinkva. This is Lovely Deplorable Knitter, and this is our supplemental election episode.
Yes, this is our election episode, but unfortunately, there's not as much to report on as we had hoped there would be.
No, there isn't. And I'm old enough to remember 4 years ago when it was all pretty much wrapped up.
You're old
quickly.
enough to remember 4 years ago?
I am. Some people aren't. It's surprising.
Was that your first presidential election?
No.
Or no? You were able to vote before that, right? Oh, Romney.
Right. For Romney. That weasel. Yeah. I remember that one too.
No, I was thinking about it because, last night Florida kept coming up a lot in the 2000 election, and I believe I was 17 at the time. So I didn't vote in that election. I was like 6 months shy or something. It was really frustrating to me.
Right.
Not that it matters because I'm in New York, and our polls closed at 9:00 last night. At 9:02, Biden was declared the winner. So, but I still do my duty, and we got some Republicans locally. So that was a good thing. But
that is
good. I wasn't exactly thrilled about the presidential part where in 2 minutes they were able to say, yeah, he's got that.
Right. You'd think that they'd really drag it out, maybe for 5 or 6.
With the exodus from New York City, I was actually thinking that it might be a slightly closer race.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess the New Yorkers haven't actually left the state; they've just left the city, so it kind of doesn't matter.
There is a certain amount of those votes, like that Trump is doing well in Philadelphia. Well, how? Like, it was just burning. How did you think that? But
that's some stuff I don't understand. Like, the riots that have been going on in all of these places that like were totally blue. Like, they're saying that he was the cause of those riots. But if you look at it, it's Black Lives Matters, who is not endorsed by the president. It is endorsed by Biden, who said it's just an idea.
It's especially frustrating when last night Bevelyn Betty was actually stabbed. She's okay, but she was stabbed. I believe she was in DC, and Elijah Schaefer from Slightly Offensive, who he and his crew go around and they film the riots and everything. He was targeted specifically, and he had security that took him out of there because people were hunting for him. And so you have different conservative voices, or even just in Elijah Schaefer's case, he may be conservative, but he is out there with a camera. That is what he does. The camera says what the camera says. He's not affecting the scene. He's just videoing it.
Right.
And that, again, being attacked by people. But at the end, again, we have those disturbances. We have AOC was reelected, and Ilhan Omar, how? And I know Project Veritas had shown cases of voter fraud in Minnesota, but what a horrible.
Well, I mean, Dr. Alveda King was on Fox News this morning saying that she saw stuff happening at her polling place. Like, they weren't making people sign for their ballots and things, which you have to do. Right. And so it makes me wonder, is it really legitimate? Or did they do these things on purpose in areas where maybe it's a more Republican spot, so they didn't count? Or maybe, I just wonder how many ballots they're going to find in the trunk of cars, because last night I fell asleep around 10:30. And then at 1:45, my husband made some loud noise, which woke me up. So I went out to see what he was doing. He was still watching the results. And they had stopped counting at that point. Mm-hmm. And we knew the margins. And so it's kind of making me wonder, like, well, why did they stop counting? Or all of a sudden boxes of ballots going to be in somebody's trunk that we're going to just discover and it's going to be fabulous?
Right. There seems to be an agreement about, and by the way, we stopped counting at this time of night. as if the night shift doesn't exist and you didn't know this would happen. Like you
Right.
didn't know that you count ballots into the night? What?
Yeah, it's disconcerting how that's been going on.
Yeah, it is disturbing. And not only that, but with Instagram and YouTube saying, oh, by the way, election results may not be final. Oh, this is totally normal. Actually, it isn't. If you
It's
keep
not
repeating
normal.
that it isn't, it's still not normal. There's no point in which you keep saying that is normal makes it normal, because it's not.
Right. And it's the media trying to make people think that this is how it should go, and it's not. And yeah, there was a huge unprecedented amount of mail-in voting this time, but I mean, Florida had a ton of mail-in voting and they handled it very well. They reported last night. I don't understand why. Is it North Carolina that has 9 days after the election to record votes? Like, where are they coming from that far after the election?
Yeah, it's
That's the part that's very disturbing to me.
uh-huh.
And Anne mentioned before we started that there's a state, which one is it? Wisconsin,
that there are more votes than there are registered voters. Super sus, bro. What are you doing there?
seriously. It's everybody kept saying, oh, Trump is gonna steal the election, he's gonna, but where they stopped counting in the blue counties last night. They stopped counting in all these places where they expect to get more Democratic votes, and that just raises all these red flags to me, because why did you stop counting? Oh, because you needed to find 100,000 more ballots, you got to work on that. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, it's bad. And again, we've had elections for 200 years, and we've had them successfully all of this time. And as Mark Stein, he's been doing live blogging thing. As he mentioned, chaos is a choice that you can and this all like, oh well, it's all a mess, we'll fix it later, is deliberate.
Right. And I don't know, last night, so when I randomly got up in the middle of the night last night, the president was going to be on, so of course I stayed up because I was awake, so I figured I might as well see what he had to say, and I felt so hopeful. And then I turned on the news this morning, and that sense of dread, like, in my gut again. And I don't know if it can happen because they're trying so hard to cheat. And that's seriously disturbing. And the whole fact that everybody's going after this guy who is so obviously senile. He called his granddaughter his son Bo last night.
Yes.
I mean, come on.
That was absolutely insane. And it's like, buddy, and his son Bo, who won the state Senate race. It's like, what sort of parallel universe did you just roll in from? Like, what?
And then later on, he also called her the wrong name again and said that she was Bo's daughter as opposed to Hunter's.
Yeah.
So,
whose kid is this? Mine, my son's.
It's hard to say at this point.
Well, it would explain the specter of Beau Biden hanging over the Democrat National Convention. It rests heavily upon his mind. But better to think of him than the other children, I suppose. As cruel as that sounds.
I don't know. I was really. I really have trouble understanding how he did so well. And part of it, I think, is that they weren't necessarily on the up and up, which is not a surprise to anybody who follows anything. I mean, really. But I really also felt like it's the media, because I was having a conversation, and my mother-in-law does not have cable. She only watches network news because that's what she has available to her. And sometimes we'll talk to her and she'll be like, oh, I saw this thing about, like, one example was when the president was being impeached, she was talking about how terrible it was and she couldn't believe he did that. And we're like, what? Right. What are you talking about? And we brought her up to speed with some conservative news sources. And I think a lot of the trouble is that the news is just so blatantly biased, and all of the stories about Trump are so blatantly negative and lies and twisting of the truth, that if that's the source that people have, if they aren't seeking out more information, they don't know.
Right. Well, Rush has a phrase, low information voter. It's not that this group of people is dumb. It's that politics isn't their thing and they don't really pay attention. They just kind of get what wafts in. Like they only see the biggest headlines and they're like, oh, okay. And you don't click through to the story. You don't dig deeper because you're doing other things with your life, presumably, that,
Right.
which isn't a bad thing if politics isn't your thing, but politics has such a firm grip on everything in our life, and it really shouldn't be, but it is. And that if you just see the sort of the top skimming of the news, then it, the the media, the mainstream media purposely keep the top skimming of the news totally on their side. So
Mm-hmm.
Trump is evil, Trump is evil, Trump is evil. If that's your top skimming and that's all some people see, and also the top skimming is vote, 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 this is the most important election, that does affect certain populations.
It affects a lot, and it's that's a really good way to put it, is low information, because I know people aren't as into it as we are.
Right.
But we're living in an age right now where it's not like when our parents were kids. And I mean, JFK would be like a conservative now. Like they have gotten so far from where they were so quickly that I just can't believe that 70 million people in our country think that socialism is a good deal.
Right.
Think that a guy who says, I'm going to ban fracking and oil and I'm going to raise your taxes is a good, legitimate person to hold office. I don't even get it.
Or at least because the guy says so many different things that you choose the one that you do like. Mm-hmm. He says, oh, well, he won't really do fracking. Well, he also said that he would. You can't have it both ways. You can't that like, oh, well, Joe Biden, he's such a lovely, nice guy. Nah, he isn't. Oh, I'm sure, the old white guy will bring our country together. He hasn't been able to for 47 years, but sort of there's a lot of emotionalism and there's a lot of showmanship and there's a lot of what a person says versus what a person does. And if they keep saying nice things, and also if all your friends think that Joe Biden is the thing, and if all your friends are saying that orange man bad, he is. I've seen several posts today from liberals who, they have said horrible things about Trump voters before, but it's a little bit of hope that this morning they like to repeat their sentiment that if you voted for Trump, then you're dead to me. So, at least somebody's unhappy. But you have all these, it's all for, equality is apparently on Biden's side. And we talked about the crime bill and hope and justice and love and all these things. And I don't know if you've seen Crime of Grindelwald, the new Fantastic Beasts movie. It's the second one.
Yes.
Where how you have, not that I think Biden is as twisted as Grindelwald, but a little bit. The current social justice movement, I would say, has some similarities, though I'm sure they would say the same thing about us. But you have Grindelwald get out on stage and say, we are not for hate, we're for love and hope and truth, and everyone just gets misty-eyed and you're like, oh, you just killed people. Like nobody saw that when you killed people, but you just killed people. You just did some bad stuff. But that you have this very, no, they are the haters and they hate you and we're going to behave justly. You do have that twisting thing where, no, you're the evil one acting against me and it's your fault.
Is that I think things would have probably been a lot different if COVID hadn't happened, because I think even the riots that have taken place would not have been as extreme because more people were working, less people were home. If we didn't have the pandemic and then the incidents that caused the riots, I think that it would have been, the economy was Trump's golden flag. And I think that you can't go back, can't second guess, but I really think that a lot of things would have been different without the pandemic. And that's really discouraging. And I don't know how people could have been, okay, yeah, so things are kind of sucking right now, but it was okay. And things were good and people were working and making more money. I mean, my husband is a prime example. He's worked at the same company for 21 years. He did not get a raise for like 7 of them. And then when Trump got into office, he started getting raises again. Mm-hmm. See, that's how we know that he was doing good things, because 7 years he was sitting there hanging out. They were like, oh, we can't afford a raise. We can't afford a raise. Trump gets into office. They're like, raises for everybody. It was like Oprah.
Right.
You get a raise and you get a raise and you get a raise. I mean, and I don't understand how people forget that kind of thing so quickly.
Right.
You know?
And like you said, with the pandemic, that everybody, I mean, we're communicating through a screen right now, but it's a double screen, physical screen, and screen through which we see things. That we are, if everything is, if your view of people is entirely what you see them post online, and especially since, and you can also at that point focus in on opinions that you like and delete ones you don't like very easily, that you don't see the broader world as a whole. Like, for example, they want to blame Trump's election on social media manipulation. And I believe that the people who run social media themselves only see the world through a small thing. So the whole spectrum of humanity is a little blind to them too. But that you do have a lot of people where suddenly social media is much more of their world. And that does affect people. That you do, that
the pandemic has really changed our world outlook. I mean, because of distance, you and I would always interact the way we do, because It's not possible for us to go and hang out together because we're not traveling that far once a week. But for a lot of people, dude, you can come here. I'm not going to South Dakota once a week.
Well, fine.
I mean, we have lives and jobs and things. That's the thing. But a lot of people don't have their community anymore. Even my dad and I have talked about this. We have some people we know who are single, who sometimes they don't have somebody to bounce ideas off of. And so sometimes they'll say something to you and you're like, that's kind of goofy. And I think that that's happening more and more because people are isolated in their houses, and maybe they're not interacting with people who challenge them or call them out. Like, it's what you were getting at with the social media. Our lens has gotten so small and so focused, and so people just only see what they want to see. And I mean, you got Instagram blocking hashtags, so you can't even see what's trending, which is excellent.
Yeah, super cool. How nice.
I mean, and when you are using social media that way, that's a huge hindrance. And they did it on purpose. They said definitely. They weren't trying to do election results, but they did it after all of the rappers came out for Trump. And you can't tell me that was a coincidence. That's just not.
Yeah. Yeah, it's horrible. But yes, and especially like you said, when people they only live in their heads for a while, and that they speak what's in their heads, and everyone around them like, actually, that's kind of weird. I feel like that's a lot when there's many different, a lot of social media is retweeting and not writing your own stuff. That sometimes, and again, it's not as if I'm infallible or anything, but the idea of take what you believe and say it out loud, or write it down and then read it back, and then picking out your own arguments, that there are certain posts and things that you're like, did you think that through? Did you,
Yeah, and sometimes you'll see people just like randomly reposting stuff, and you'll be like, but did you even like fact check or research? Or because I can pull up 6 clips right now that totally refute everything you just said. Like, people, right. There's too much relying on, our society relies on memes and catchphrases, and It's the same thing we've talked about with the Democrats.
And yeah, you do need the ability to be challenged by other people, and I think that's important. But back to back to our proper
topic.
Back to our proper election coverage. Before getting to the hope bit, we do have some miserable news out of South Dakota that we have approved legalized marijuana, both medical and recreational use. And I know some people are supportive of that, but the news out of Colorado, where it's 20% of high school students have smoked pot in the last 30 days, where kids are getting higher concentrations of marijuana. And then when you get a super high concentration, the overdose creates, it's this combination of screaming and vomiting. And you can't actually hold the people down no matter how many sedatives you get, those creepy things like that. So, and even if you're not getting the high dosages, pot has a tendency to totally kill your ambition. So there's a lot of people saying like, oh, tax revenue. I'm like, no, in order to have tax revenue, you need people to pay for that. Right.
Yeah, I'm feeling really down about the election. I feel like they have cheated. I'm not sure that Trump is going to pull it out because it seems like everything's against him. I've been praying because that's what I do. That's the only thing I can do. But there is one good thing so far that I've seen. We still have the Senate. No, but seriously, because all of the things that they want to do, since we have the Senate, it's a firewall. It is going to help protect our freedoms from the nonsense.
Right. And
to an extent, at least.
I think that is a very important thing to have the Senate and to have different elected officials that will put up as many roadblocks as possible. But further than that, and I mean, of course, you said pray. Praying is the most important thing. Please do. But one of the things that really gives me hope from a political angle, and not just a faith angle, is that Trump is not one of these namby-pamby Republicans who works really hard in their concession speeches. That is not who he is. This is a guy who knew this was going to happen coming in. He's certainly lawyered up and he is ready to contest what needs to be contested, even though people will say like, oh, you're just trying to get the election you're trying to cheat, you're trying to have voter suppression, you're trying to say that every vote doesn't need to be counted. That's already the cry. Count every vote. Well, they're cheating votes. Count every one. It's a problem. But he's not someone, and his family isn't, his administration isn't. They're not people who will just roll over because it's the polite thing to do.
No, you're correct. And like I said last night, when I was up in the middle of the night with my husband watching the news, I really felt like Trump, like he got called out for saying like a victory speech on the thing, but he was saying, no, we've got 25% left to come in from, Pennsylvania, and we have enough of a lead that it's not going to matter. And so I really think if you look at the numbers, and like, I can't wait to hear what they're going to do about Wisconsin that's got to be looked into. You cannot have more votes than people that are registered. It just doesn't work. So
and a lot of people are looking at Michigan, where Michigan in the night had 130,000 plus votes that they just found from nowhere, and they were only Biden votes. Like there's a graph of when the votes are counted, you see the lines and they're both going, and then one
and
goes
then it goes
up.
Straight over.
Yep.
Yeah, it goes up and over, and you're like, but what? Where did that come from? Like,
yes.
Yeah. No. So you're right. Trump is not going to roll over. He is not going to. But if in the end, after everything is said and done, he still doesn't win. I mean, he did install the Supreme Court justice, the three of them. We have the Senate.
He put protections in on Pennsylvania fracking.
And I think that I hope this is a wake-up call to the Republicans. I mean, for real, this is we need to be a stronger party. We need to appeal to more people. We need to.
I think the outreach effort has been very excellent, and that we've done a lot of things.
But we need more young people. We need more. So we're not going to be the party of free stuff. It's not what we believe in. So we need to appeal to people with younger candidates, people who are more up to speed on what's going on, that younger people can relate to, because that's where it's going to happen. We need to get new voters. We need to get people on our side who are going to see that it's not an old fuddy-duddy party like everybody says. It was always like the party of the rich, and it's like, it's not that.
Again, there certain amount of outreach with Kimberly Klasick, and I forget the name of the young man who is congressman, I believe. I think he won.
Madison Cawthorn?
Yes.
Madison won, yes.
Yes, which is excellent.
Kimberly unfortunately did not win.
Right, which is a pity, but I think there was a lot of appeal there. And I think I would hope that she would do well in the future, and at least would keep speaking and trying to push the dial over.
Yep.
But I would kind of like to bring up a when Trump had the coronavirus, and we didn't talk about that much. We talked about it a little bit with Kathy Karen, who was on that week, but we didn't sit down and talk about it. But one of the things that really concerned me at the time was that you have, and I mentioned a little bit, but we have the entirety of the Western world focused and trying to, for the success of one man, that we have a lot of Western values and Christian values in government and different freedoms, different everything else. And we have people from Australia, and we have people from England, and we have people all around sort of looking to one guy for leadership. And that kind of like, not that Trump is a bad leader, but that there shouldn't just be one leader. There should be many leaders, and there should be many levels of leaders. That you shouldn't have one president, but you should have, again, leaders throughout different countries. And I think that there's been enough stress lately that those leaders have emerged to a certain extent, that there are protests against the lockdowns in Australia, that Macron in France has been surprisingly strong against what has happened out there.
A little thing about Macron, though, is that apparently he's up against a conservative, and that seems to be part of the reason why he's swinging a little bit more center. Just as a little FYI.
That is true. And certain, again, we need more conservatism in France. We need more conservatism everywhere. The Brexit Party is trying to rebrand as the Reform Party. Whether or not they and Lawrence Fox are going to get together is iffy. But the other day we had show solidarity at the French embassy in London. But you have, again, Trump can't be the only guy, not in the world, not in America. And that obviously it is incredibly important that Trump wins. We're in a lot of trouble if he doesn't. But let us not just say, oh, well, if we lose, we lose, and then we stop there. That we still have to, if we lose, that it's not an end. We need to push back at every level. And certainly the other side will. So don't be like, oh, well, we lost, good sport, see you next time. That is not what will happen. On every political level, we need to sit down, we need to push back, we need to write letters, we need to make campaigns, no matter what it is. The Democrat side is very, very good at this. And we heard before the election that we should not be outworked and get out the vote efforts. And afterwards, we should not be outworked in pushing forward more conservative policies.
That's very true. And I was thinking this morning about what is going to happen if Trump does lose. And then I kind of came down to myself, what can I do if Trump loses? Mm-hmm. What can I live in a fairly conservative area, but I'm sure that there are things that we can do wherever we are. And that's the difference. And you mentioned that the Democratic Party is really good at getting the vote out and stuff. They're also really good at everybody toes the party line. Like Pelosi says jump and they all ask how high, because that's their mentality, whereas we're more likely to hold our people accountable. And so I think it's good to hold our people accountable, but we also need to find a balance where we can also, Anne, I didn't like that thing you did, but we all need to do this together, and we'll kind of work on that in the background instead of like publicly going against each other like we tend to do sometimes. But I don't know. Sorry.
DK, have you been writing me hate mail?
You wish.
I know. But yes, according to the Drudge Report, we are still at Biden 238 and Trump 213. So hopefully when we see you next time, that's going to be a bigger number in red.
Yeah, I'm hoping. But I'm also prepared to hunker down, because not just from Instagram telling me that this is normal and it's okay. Such nonsense.
Yeah.
We're going to come back in a day or two. Get some more info for you guys. We're gonna talk about knitting. This was just about politics this time because it's a big deal. A lot happening.
Big deal. Better hope for tomorrow, and we will all see you then.
Yeah, we'll see you next time. Thanks, guys.
All right, bye.
Bye.